Story 1. You can always learn a person's true character by the way they treat people they do not have to be nice to. Story 2. One trait I notice is being friendly and nice only when they want something, largely ignoring you otherwise. Story 3. They pick at you, what you wear, what you look like, your weight. They criticize everything. Even things they obviously have no knowledge about, they try to outdo you. They paint themselves as victims while anyone better than them gets fired or ostracized in whatever group setting the person is in. They undermine others and pretend to be victims while actively sabotaging. They are the floaters, the nuisances that always seem to rise to the top. Story 4. Lack of curiosity about other people. All conversations shift back toward themselves, complaining about the same thing repeatedly without effort to change the situation. Story 5. They have no self-awareness. They refuse to take accountability and consistently blame others. They are unable to reflect on their actions. Story 6. How they treat people they do not need, such as waiters, janitors, or strangers. Kindness without an audience says everything. Story 7. Never able to accept responsibility or admit guilt. If they deflect onto you when you try to explain that they hurt you. When you try to explain that they have hurt you, they immediately jump to defensive attack mode. Story 8. They keep telling you how much of a good person or nice guy they are. If they have to tell you, then they are not. Story 9. Their time is more important than yours. They expect you to do things when it suits them and do not apologize when they are late or leave you waiting only to change their mind. It is selfishness, entitlement, and lack of respect all rolled into one. Story 10. Makes fun of other people when they cannot hear, like a random stranger walking past or while people watching. Just casual negativity and cruelty under the guise of being funny or having fun. I feel like most people do not notice when it happens. They just laugh it off. Personally, it is a red flag. Always pointing out the negative, flaws, or nitpicking others by default is a bad sign. I just do not think it is funny. You can still be funny and have fun while being positive instead, or even neutral. Story 11. I have found that people who say things like, I am an empath, or I can walk into a room and know how everyone is feeling, tend to be completely self-absorbed. They do not care how anyone else is feeling, so they project their feelings onto everyone and assume they are correct. Story 12. When someone does not care how others feel or does not know when to put someone else first, even if they do not really want to. Story 13. I always thought that if people adore and treat animals well, they would automatically be empathetic and good towards humans. I was wrong about that. I always took it as a sign that those are good people. No, just to animals. Story 14. They always think about themselves, believe they are the smartest person in the room, and are never wrong. Story 15. No manners, no matter how poor or rich you are in life, manners are free. Saying please, thank you very much, and so on, is not difficult and can sometimes put a smile on people's faces. Story 16. Check how they treat beings that are different from them. Animals, plants, the elderly, children, people with different skin colors, or other social classes. For the most part, it is very clear when they only care about themselves and their peers. Story 17. They cannot be happy for other people's success or happiness. Example, we went on a lovely holiday. Response, I cannot afford to go on holiday. Rather than, that sounds amazing, tell me more. Story 18. Often subtle signs are not enough to rely on. If only they were, no one would ever get stuck in domestic violence situations. Most of the answers here so far are legitimate, but I am not sure they qualify as subtle. Story 19. Opinions based on feelings rather than facts. They ignore facts because their ego and feelings are more important. Story 20. Pay attention to how they talk about or treat the friend who is not around. If they mistreat them, then you can be sure they would do the same to you when you are not around. Story 21. When they make you feel like you are overreacting every time you bring up something that bothered you. Story 22. Rude to service staff, dry when talking to you, as if uninterested in conversation. If they are even a little racist or hypocritical, such as saying, oh, this is bad, then doing the same thing themselves and saying, well, it is different when I do it. Story 23. When they blame everything on their attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or trauma response. Rude equals, oh, it is my attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Blatantly lie or cheat equals, oh, it is my trauma response. Then they go through their lives thinking they have a free pass for being a terrible person. Story 24. You are telling a story or talking about something that happened, and they are always trying to outdo you with a story of their own. Story 25. They laugh at the suffering of others. I do not mean major issues like comas and similar situations. They laugh at small things such as the kid getting bullied or the kids receiving free lunch. Even though they are not participating, they find it amusing. It is only a matter of time before that callous, cold, uncaring behavior spreads and they begin acting fully evil. Story 26. The way they talk about other people matters. If someone speaks poorly about everyone they have ever met or has multiple fallings out while claiming the other person was always at fault, it is a good indication that they are probably not a good person. They will most definitely say bad things about you the moment you leave. Story 27. Not knowing their priorities and focusing on the wrong things. Irresponsible, leaves a mess for others to clean up. Story 28. Refusing to take accountability for the hurt they caused, inconsiderate of others and how their actions might affect them, deflecting blame, manipulating, and when their actions do not match their words. Story 29. I have a friend who does pretty much everything mentioned in the top 15 comments. Well, time to distance myself. Story 30. They give you the ick even if they have not done anything wrong. This feeling is not always accurate, but it happens often enough that you should pay attention. They talk about others behind their backs. If they do this to others, they are likely doing it to you as well. They treat those they perceive as beneath them poorly. They believe some people are beneath them. They behave perfectly when in the presence of those they wish to impress, but behave badly when they are not. They believe that some good act, such as going to church, volunteering, or donating to charity, allows them to behave badly without consequence. Story 31. I would say there are several signs. Based on the single-sentence comments, most of these would indicate an insecure person or at least someone without proper social experience, but not necessarily a bad person. What genuinely makes me wonder about someone's intentions is when they bring up something negative that you do not want to discuss and then act like it is a completely normal topic. When you call them out, you are considered the bad person for reacting. Story 32. They talk about people behind their backs and share secrets. One can only assume they are doing the same to you. Story 33. Making broad generalizations based on assumptions. Refuse to accept that not every explanation is just an excuse. When they apologize and do it again anyway. Story 34. Judging someone as a person is not good because you do not know all the variables. However, their energy level introduces them first. Trust your feelings inside. Story 35. You feel unsafe in their presence. The outside world will speak highly of them. But when the front door closes, the sadistic narcissist emerges. I have experienced this and am still in therapy. I will not be the victim anymore. Story 36. Lots of people laugh at me when I say this, but as a pigeon enthusiast, the way someone treats pigeons is a big indicator of their personality. Some of the worst people I have ever met are the types to swerve to try and hit a pigeon on the road or the types to kick at or shout at pigeons on the street. Watch out for the smaller things, trust me. Story 37. They say, I have no regrets in my life. I cannot imagine anyone thinking they are so perfect that they have made no mistakes in life. Story 38. They make jokes about vulnerable populations. They interpret strangers' behaviors in the worst possible way. They assume the worst about everyone. They are not in touch with old friends or family members and act as if everyone is against them. Story 39. Grown adults smuggling their underage children drinks. Are you going to find me a new job? Are you going to pay the fine? Story 40. Watch how people are treated in hospitality or other service industries. Anyone who is rude to a waiter or cashier without reason should be avoided. The same applies to being mean to animals, children, or elderly people. People who speak negatively about ex-partners or family early in a relationship and who do not take responsibility for their actions are also a big red flag. Story 41. Rude to strangers. Angry for no good reason. Exploiting people, which is harder to see since they usually manipulate well. Story 42. I have always felt that if you want to see what kind of person someone is, observe the way they treat frontline workers such as cashiers, clerks, and customer service staff. That will often tell you everything you need to know. Story 43. There is always some kind of amazing event where they saved someone or helped a stranger, but they do not show the same behavior towards their loved ones. It makes you think you are not worthy of receiving that. Story 44. Conversations always circle back to them. Even when you share something important, they pivot to their own experiences without acknowledging yours. Story 45. Disliking animals and children. I don't like children. I don't dislike them. I just dislike the uncleanness and loudness. However, when I see a child, I do not wish anything bad for them. Those who hate are red flags. Story 46. My sister-in-law hit every single one of these, except I have never witnessed her being mean to an animal, I suppose. Story 47. Littering is so easy to avoid by taking an extra 15 seconds to throw something away in a trash can. Littering reflects taking shortcuts in many aspects of life, in my opinion. Story 48. When they use sarcastic one-liners in every conversation to seek attention from everyone. When they control the group and if you do not follow them, they shut you out and turn everyone against you. Story 49. If they voted for Donald Trump, are rude to service staff, are mean toward animals, and look down on those less fortunate than themselves. Story 50. They always play music or movies at volume 10 despite being asked not to. Either that or they are incredibly unintelligent. I believe there is some overlap. Story 51. See how they react when they are angry. Speaks volumes. The loudmouths are the weak ones, but those who become silent, beware. Run. Code red. I repeat, code red. Story 52. When you try to look out for them and they accuse you of being unsupportive, then ignore your apologies. Story 53. The sad reality is that there are no subtle signs. There were very bad people in my life as a child and no one knew. Being self-centered, stingy, boastful, or aggressive are typical symptoms of being human. We all exhibit those behaviors at one time or another. What becomes of the people and animals who are under someone's influence or authority is evidence of their quality. Sadly, that takes time. Story 54. There is no sign nobody is 100% bad and vice versa, so you might want to talk it out, maintain distance, forgive, or do anything that brings you peace rather than fussing over that person. If they commit acts that are evil, crimes, or injustices and have bad intentions, then I know they are not good. Story 55. If you were talking about something unpleasant that happened, they derail the conversation to make it about themselves. Story 56. Does not watch movies or series. This is often an indicator of a lack of empathy because they cannot put themselves in someone else's shoes and understand their feelings. It is necessary to watch movies and series to develop this understanding. Story 57. Edit. Adding white supremacist and National Socialists to this category as well. Are a supporter of Donald Trump. There is no universe where supporting his actions against numerous minorities makes anyone a good person. There is enough education and information available today to determine what is morally right and what is morally wrong. Ignorance is no excuse. Story 58. When they hedge their speech, when they say just enough to get you to believe something, then rely on, I never said that. That is manipulation. My policy is now to accept only direct and clear messages. I do not know what you mean. No nods, winks, or nudges. Say what you mean or leave. Story 59. Deflection, denial, and refusing to acknowledge what you did to them. They also surround themselves with yes men. I had to drop a friend like that recently. Story 60. Accountability. Stories do not line up. They constantly devalue and demonize others they have discarded. This indicates something sinister happened. Instead of providing all the details, they offer an inconsistent story. I would rather share details that do not make me look the best than act like I was perfect. Very rarely do abuse victims tolerate extensive abuse without reacting negatively sometimes. Serial daters believe they know everything. Their opinion is fact, and they refuse to accept any education or facts that others can provide. Story 61. I have found that when service workers are treated poorly, it is a bad sign. They will treat you the same way when you no longer provide immediate benefit to them. Story 62. When people treat their pet poorly, choose to take in an animal that relies on them, and treat it like a nuisance or decoration, or do no research on how to care for it, they are very likely not going to be a good person. Story 63. They cut into traffic at the last second to make an exit instead of waiting in line with the other cars. Story 64. They are conservatives who go to church proclaiming their piety, while supporting the separation of Hispanic children from their parents and the removal of healthcare from the elderly and poor. Story 65. Thinking they are the boss of everyone just because they are old and a man, and back in their home they act like the boss. Story 66. They have a lot of money they did not inherit. It is not universal, but common enough to warrant suspicion. People do not get rich by being compassionate. Story 67. They are very nice to you but rude to waiters, security guards, or anyone they do not need. This disconnect always says a lot. Story 68. When people follow a color or group regardless of the wrong actions they take, those who support red and blue will justify any harm their side causes, no matter how severe, and will also justify whatever actions they take against you. Story 69. Do not get involved. Just ignore it. Forget about it. Forgive them. Be the bigger person. These are the worst responses ever. Pretending injustice is not happening does not stop it from happening. It lets perpetrators know they can continue their behavior unchallenged. It allows others to support them by turning a blind eye and policing their victims, maintaining the status quo. Story 70. People who feel entitled to other people's time and energy without giving anything of value in return. Story 71. People who are always acting like they are trying to hide something, acting very secretive during everyday interactions. Story 72. Maybe a hot take, but eco-fascists are people who wish for the apocalypse and for all humans to be erased from existence. Story 73. Always late, making you wait. When people do this, they are clearly saying you and your time are worth less than nothing. Story 74. Complaining and gossiping behind everyone's backs, including their closest friends and family, but acting overly nice to their faces and pretending to be a really good friend. Also, people who do not have the common sense to avoid causing trouble in their own environment and who betray those who support them. Story 75. They try too hard to be or seem nice. If you are a nice person, I do not think you feel you have to try or make it known. Story 76. The subtlest sign would be passive aggressiveness and not following directions even if they were told, just to prove a point. The water closet is almost always wrong. Story 77. When asked a legitimate question, they respond with name-calling instead of providing an answer. Story 78. Selfishness, preoccupation with appearances, inability to do kind things for others if they do not like them, small-mindedness, cowardice. Any one of these traits alone is hardly a deal-breaker, but combined, they create a sneaky and dangerous person who is completely oblivious to their flaws and incapable of doing the right thing. Story 79. When they watch Oppenheimer and feel nothing when he is speaking to the audience, picturing the burning bodies of the people, and insist the movie is sad only because they made Oppenheimer look like the bad guy in the courtroom scenes. My brother-in-law is a narcissist. Story 80. I know this does not really mean anything, but for me, it is how people treat animals. I know that murderers and abusers can be animal lovers, but whenever I meet people and see how they treat the life around them, it instantly changes the way I see and feel about them. Story 81. I had a boss once who drove as if every other car was an obstacle on the road. He is my working example in other ways of the old Dave Barry quote. Someone who is nice to you but rude to the waiter is not a nice person. Story 82. People who habitually leave the shopping cart by their car rather than in the cart storage area. I am not talking about occasional instances due to urgent circumstances. That is understandable sometimes. I am talking about people who do it all the time with no consideration for others. Story 83. They are selfish in small ways. They do not wait for people in groups, neglect them in conversations, and spread rumors and gossip. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.